So look for it. We'll post a link in the Teams chat once it's up, so you have it. And the recording has started. All right. Well, welcome to the third town hall about the Concur travel system. Thank you very much for attending. I'm going to, again, ask everyone to keep on mute and during the presentation. We'll have time for questions when you can jump off of mute and ask your question, or you can put it in the chat, and we will have people monitoring the chat, and we will pause the presentation and come back and answer all the questions in the chat as they build up. So don't think we're ignoring you. We're not ignoring you in the chat. We will get to you. We will answer all questions and make sure that we're getting answers out there. So today we have 3 different segments of the town hall. We've got the first one. We're going to talk about Concur a bit, and I will do that. And then I'm going to hand this over to our AVP and controller, Cindy Lyons, to talk about policy updates around travel. And then we will be handing this off to our international folks to discuss the international hub and their updates. So you get a 3-for-1 today. I hope you're all excited. It's all travel all the time. This is all we do now is travel. But with that, I will go ahead and get started on the Concur section. So just an update, or this is the agenda for the Concur piece. We're going to do a project timeline update. I would like to talk about the travel and expense process again. The changes, I want to just go over them again. We've talked about these a couple of times now, but it's always good to bring them back up to the larger group. Workflow and approvers, we've got some change there, so I would like to go over that. We also want to talk about naming conventions of your travel requests and travel expenses, and your business requests and business expenses. And then we'll talk about training, and I have a quick demo of expense to show you. Last time we talked requests and booking. This time we'll talk expense, and I hope in July to demo some of the mobile apps that we have access to, or not July, January. Goodness gracious. Maybe I wish July, but it's not terrible out today. So we will get to that hopefully next time. I gotta give you something to keep you coming back, right? On for the project timeline of Concur, we are in phase 4. We went live with our first pilot group on November 28th. We've successfully processed, travel requisitions all the way through. We've booked flights through Concur. We have processed travel expense reports, business requests, business expense reports, the whole bit, all the way through. So we are hoping to see a bunch of volume in the coming weeks inside of Concur, so we can, in case the point of a pilot is to identify things that you may have missed during implementation, right? We do the absolute best that we can. We have hundreds of use cases and little nuances that we test through, but there's nothing that you can test that will get you, 100% perfect for a production instance, for real users in there banging around on stuff. And so we're hoping that the pilot can identify anything that we've missed and we can fix it. And then when we roll it out to the larger campus, everything is good to go. So, the pilot is all of administration as well as IHV. They were very accommodating for us. So there's those complex international trips that a lot of those folks take. We can get in and get tested, as well as the volume from some of the administration. So we can get that part tested as well. The current go live date is targeted for February 20th, 2023. So put that on your calendars and circle it. We'll be entering travel requisitions university-wide and business requisitions university-wide after that date. We will be holding up the e-travel system for a period after that to allow for travel recs entered in e-travel to be processed through, and then the expense report can be also processed in e-travel to match those up. However, that won't be forever. It'll probably only be a couple of months. So, there may be some travel recs that have to be entered that were, entered in e-travel and that need to be entered again in Concur to accommodate those dates. All right, we still have people logging in. This is great. So this is the travel and expense process. I'm sure if you have come to one of these past town halls or seen another presentation on this, you have seen this slide before. The The overall process, not really changing. Same idea. You got to put your travel requisition in to get it fully approved, book your travel, and then, after your trip, put your expense report in. I really want to harp on that. Enter your travel request before your trip and get it fully approved before your trip. That's something that as a campus, we maybe haven't been perfect with in the past, and it's something that we would like to get cleaned up. It's a USM policy, so UMB doesn't really have any control over it. We kind of just have to follow these guidelines. And it is something that auditors will pick up on and that we've been dinged for in the past, and that I would anticipate us getting dinged for in the future. Generally speaking, auditors take a very hard look at new systems. Our travel system has not been heavily audited in the past, but I would expect some heavier audits in the future with a new system rolled out. And that travel rec, fully approved travel rec before your trip is something that they will target. I think the last good year we had data in 2019 before, the whole world was upended. We had 1,400 expense reports, travel expense reports that did not have a fully approved travel rec before the trip. That's a problem. I know we took I think 9,000 trips or 10,000 trips, but 1,400 is a pretty large number. So we'd like to get that down a bit. But again, the actual process is not changing much here. The changes I'm detailing on the next slide are these. And again, if you've come to a previous town hall or one of the other presentations, you have seen this slide before, but I'll go over it again. We are moving fully to the GSA rate, including incidentals. So, you don't have to subtract that $5 anymore, but you also can't add some of those the porter tips. If you're leaving a tip for your porter, or if you're cash tips, for someone, you can't put that on an expense report anymore. So just be cognizant. Those GSA rates, that per diem is fully calculated automatically inside of Concur. If you saw the request demo, you just click per diem, and based off of your trip dates and where you're going, it calculates it and adds it right to your request, and it carries it forward right to your expense report. Mileage is now automatically calculated. We have this really cool mileage calculator feature in Concur. You put your home address in, you put where you're going in, if you're going to the airport, if you're taking a road trip up to Gettysburg or whatever, you put that in, then you put your work trip, your work address in, and so you can deduct your commute. It calculates it all for you, does the multiplication against the mileage, and drops that right on your travel request as well, with all of the backup. The maps is backup, and then it carries it forward to your expense report. It also includes, turn-by-turn instructions if you're living in 1996 and still print those out and use them if you don't have a cell phone or a GPS in your car. So it does give you that too. You can create your business request form for business expenses in Concur. So if you're buying something on your own personal credit card, you need to get it requested and then approved, and then you can expense it after the fact. That's all now housed in Concur. And we did pull out the central office from some of these expense reimbursements for lower dollar, low risk types of trips to speed up the process for everyone involved. And then we are requiring airfare be booked through Concur, and that the airfare being paid by personal credit cards will only be reimbursed after your trip. So if you do put your airfare on your personal credit card instead of using the UMB Ghost card that's stored in Concur, you get the points and you get all the benefits of that, but you gotta pay that bill, and you don't get that cash back until after you get back from your trip. So that was a change as well. The next two slides are the naming conventions that we are using for Concur. So for your travel naming conventions, you can kind of see on the left-hand side, that's your travel request, your travel authorization, and on the right-hand side is your travel expense for when you get back from your trip. And you can kind of see how all of this, flows through. So you put the T in for travel because it's travel, and then on the authorization side you use A, and on the expense side you use E. The year of your trip, so 2022, who the traveler is, in this case it's me, LQ, and then where you're going. If you are traveling domestically, that's the city you're going to. And if you're traveling internationally, that would be a country. So if I was going to the Netherlands, I would put, the Netherlands in there instead of St. Louis. And then after that, after you put that in there, you can put anything you'd like in after that. There's a bunch of characters left over to kind of explain, a short description of your trip on the header in case you need it. But we're moving towards this naming convention because for those folks who process a lot of these or use a lot of these or are reviewing a lot of these, travel recs, travel expenses, business recs, business expenses, it's a lot easier to have them all kind of in a uniform status, so you can kind of see just by scrolling through the names, who's going where and what they're doing, rather than having to click in and having kind of the Wild West as the naming convention, right? Because what I would put in there is not necessarily what any of the reviewers, certainly, from supervisor to international to cost center to the central office to the exceptional reviewers, may want to see, or give a lot of information about the trip or the business expense. So the next is the business expense. Same idea, right? Except we're swapping T for B for business. And then at the end, instead of the destination city or the destination country, we're using a brief description of what we're buying. Both of those slides are available as a user aid, posted on our Concur training website. So you can pull them down and download them if you're doing a lot of these, if you're entering a lot of trips or reviewing a lot of these. You can print them out, post them, keep them on your computer somewhere to refer back to, and they are linked inside the Concur app. We link right back to our training pages inside of Concur.
If we can stop right here to answer a few questions.
Absolutely. We're over 200, so I'm very, very happy. This is great. Let's. What questions do we have?
So the first question, is there a feature that will automatically subtract the 75% for the first and last day of travel?
Yep, that's calculated automatically right inside Concur.
And then the next question is, your statement about the volume of travel transactions that have happened in the past where travel happened prior to actual requests loading into UMB, what will be the backup plan to address those situations?
So
what is the plan to address those?
What an awesome question. And thank you. We can put a pin in that because the next slide is where I'm going to kind of go into detail on that. If we had any more questions, we can address them. If not, I can jump right on that one and keep going.
Well, we have one, and then you can move to the next slide. For the naming convention, is it the fiscal year or the calendar year?
I'm going to defer to Cindy on that one.
Calendar year.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you can proceed. Thank you.
All right. So for exceptions, so here's the workflow for Concur. The travel requests and the travel expense reimbursement. This isn't really changing from how we currently do it. A lot of these approvals still happen. We've changed one since the last time you've seen this slide, and I want to make a note that the supervisors. So this is the travel side, but the business expense side too, and supervisors need to be reviewing these, and I apologize, I forget exactly what word I'm supposed to use here. The supervisors need to be reviewing for compliance for both travel and business expenses. So you'll see that on both sides. So it does go from the department travel administrator to look at it, but supervisors should be looking at compliance as well, and looking at if the person can take the trip or if the business expense is appropriate. But the big change on this slide that you'll see after cost center approval is cbfo approval. So for any travel request or any travel expense reimbursement or business expense any travel specifically that is not within policy is going to be routed to Dawn Roads. So to answer the question about what happens if we don't have an approved travel request before we take our trip, when you come back from your trip and you put your travel expense reimbursement in, It will not have an approved travel request to correspond with it, which creates a lot of problems, right? First, you got to enter everything manually on your travel, your expense reimbursement. You can't just click create expense reimbursement from your request and have everything pre-populated. You also can't, as you're on your trip, use the Concur apps to automatically upload receipts and do that. So really, it's best to get your travel request in because it makes everything a lot easier on the traveler, and it keeps us in policy. But if you don't get your travel request in and you come back from your trip and you put your expense reimbursement in, Dawn is going to review it. And personally, I don't want Dawn to review anything of mine that's outside of policy. I'd like to keep my stuff off of that level, anybody's desk, right? Like, I don't want to get in trouble, and I hope that you all don't either. But there's always that risk that your expense reimbursement won't be approved, and you won't get your money that you spent for your trip because you were outside of policy. Technically it wasn't approved beforehand, so it may not be approved after the fact. And to answer the person's question, that's how we're addressing that particular audit risk. And then, of course, after Dawn looks at it, if you're outside of policy, it does go to UMB central office if it fits the criteria for them to look at on the expense side.
Luke, can I just interject there?
Yes, ma'am.
So a change from today, where if you didn't do it prior, you still have to do a request. That's no longer the case. That if you don't do it before, then you're just not doing a request at all, and it does get the routing to Dawn Rhodes.
Yep. You cannot enter a request after the fact. The system will not let you do that because based off of date criteria, right? You came back from your trip, you already took it. You can't request it after the fact. So are there any questions that came in, Linnell, or should I keep moving?
Yes, there's a couple of questions.
All right, I figured.
The first question is there a feature in Concur to let the travel admin know if they have something in the system that needs to be addressed or that a travel expense has been approved?
So there's an email sent to the next approval step. So if I'm a traveler and I submit a travel request or an expense report, my travel admin gets an email that's out there. When they log into Concur on their dashboard, they also will see approval. There's an approval screen, and they can see how many are outstanding as well.
I think another feature related to that is that on an individual basis, the travel admin, if they regularly are going into Concur to manage based on that dashboard, then maybe they don't want the emails coming through and filling up their email box. So that person can individually say, I don't want to receive these email notifications. It's not a blank, we don't do that for every, it's not an across the board. In some applications, that's what we've had, and we can't turn off things. But if you're the type of person and whether it's the travel admin or the other approvers, if you don't regularly go into Concur, then you'd want to keep those email notifications on. But right, there is a choice at the individual user level.
And then after the travel admin reviews, there is an email notification sent to the next approver, right? It goes every step. Every approver gets an email notification, and when they log in, it is on their dashboard to see that. And then as a user, you can go in and look at any of your travel requests or expense reports and check where they are in the workflow. If you're, waiting on someone, you can go exactly, see who it's assigned to and see who you're waiting on and email them if you need things moved through quickly, or call them, or, walk down the hall and tap them on the shoulder, however that works.
Okay. One other question that we can answer here. It says, I see that there is a trigger where airfare is not booked through Concur. Why?
Because the UMB policy is to require that airfare be booked in Concur, through our travel management company. And we do that for a variety of reasons. One, if you put the request in and don't book through Concur, it does kind of break that connection between, requests, booking, and expense. It doesn't integrate with the mobile applications that we have, TripIt, or, it doesn't, for you to track your trip. It doesn't integrate directly if it's an international trip with our international SOS, right? If you book through Concur, they're automatically notified. You don't have to do that manually. There's a couple other things that it just makes it easier. And then, as if you're booking through the travel management company, you do get the benefits of, any discounts that they have for volume discounts from us. You get the benefit of, any upgrades that we get. I think, specifically on rental cars, if you're renting a car, we're entitled to a whole host of upgrades and guaranteed, cars. And then if, something goes horribly wrong on your trip and your one flight is canceled and you're stranded in an airport and your next two connecting flights, right, on different airlines, you don't have to call those airlines individually. You don't have to, try to work that through at the counter. You can just call the travel management company. They're 24/7, and they can fix you all up and get you all sorted out. Even if you are in O'Hare at 2 a.m. on Halloween. I say that from experience.
Okay, so there's one more question that we can answer here, and then the other ones we can reserve to the end because I think there's points that you may touch on later.
Okay.
The question is, what happens if there's an emergency and Dawn is out of the office or unavailable?
So, Dawn can delegate. If Dawn is out of the office, she can delegate to someone. Be that, whoever she decides. And so if she does plan on being out of the office, we can have her delegate. So, you can get approved.
Yeah, most likely it will come to me then in that case, Luke.
Okay. So then Scott will be looking at your stuff. And, again, same thing applies. I don't really want my name out there for anything outside of policy for Scott or Dawn to look at. And I would expect everyone to feel the same way, but.
I don't know what the total number of exceptions are in the current world, but we don't want, I heard something like 800, which is outrageous. We don't want Dawn having to get 800 exceptions on an annual basis. If she's getting that many exceptions, things are not going to get approved. Reimbursements will not be done. So the purpose is to follow policy, and therefore we won't have as many exceptions.
Thank you, Scott.
You can proceed with the other questions. I'll hold.
All right.
Hey, Luke, real quick.
Yes, sir.
The airline, if you're booking an airfare outside of Concur, that also goes to Dawn, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Because it's outside of policy.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. All right. I'll move on. The next step is approvers. So I am going to copy. Can I copy this? No. Linnell, can you put the approval? You know what? I'll put it in chat after my part of the presentation is done. So we've got a couple of approvers here in Concur, as you saw in the previous workflow. But the two key ones right now are cost center and travel administrators, because those are the two that we have to have people put in forms for. So cost center approvers will need to request their security access. They do not have to go to required training, though I do encourage you to go to training. We have a lot of very good UPKs out there. There's a lot of very good travel aids or user aids for you to look at. So I highly encourage you to do that. I will get the link in chat, and then it is on the presentation. So when we put this out there, you'll be able to use the link through that. I want to be the forms are set up so there is a primary cost center approver, and then that primary cost center approver is at an org level, and it's 1-to-1. So one primary cost center approver per org, and then that person can delegate to, I don't know, I think like 250 different people if you want to. But I just want to caution that when someone delegates, they delegate all of their approval authority, not just one piece of it. So if you're a supervisor and a cost center approver and you delegate to someone, that delegate can approve for both supervisor and cost center. This is a change from how it's currently done, and it is a little tricky. So what we've been doing is meeting with small groups around campus to help them kind of structure how they want their approvers done inside of their organizations. So if you would like to have a meeting, with myself and Susan and, someone, from the Office of the Controller and maybe someone from International, so you can talk through all of this and we can answer any of your, individual kind of unique travel questions, let me know, send me an email, we'll get something set up, we'll get something on the calendar. I will even offer to come into the office and go to you in person if you want to see my smiling face in person, but we can obviously do this remotely, as time allows for everyone. I know everyone's pretty busy. But again, let us know. I think we've had like 5 of these on the book so far, but just shoot me an email and we'll get you set up. We'll get you scheduled. The other folks that have to request security access are travel administrators, and travel administrators do have to go to training. There's several training courses that they have to go to. I mean, I think it's on the next slide. We go into a little bit more detail about what training is available. And after the travel administrators go through the required training, they can then request access. And it works the same way. There's a primary travel administrator for an org, and then that travel administrator can delegate down to whomever else they would like to delegate to. So again, you have to be careful. You put your primary in, you are the primary for that org, and then you delegate. If you are the person, if you are like the head of your organization and you are the cost center approver and a supervisor and the travel admin, and you delegate down to someone else, they do get all of your authority. We just have to be careful, right? You don't want someone to approve something that is not where it's not appropriate. So on to that, we can talk about training. So again, training required for travel admin. You can see those boxes highlighted in blue. The Intro to Concur class is a self-study class, and it is required for travel admins to register for it before they register or before they attend the rest of the training and step through it on the UPK. The UPK link is posted on our training website for Concur, which I will also put into the chat as soon as I am done my part of the presentation, so you guys can all click on that. And get registered. We will be doing everything else. All the other training will be self-study, right? Very similar to how it's set up now. You go in, there's a lot of UPKs. I think there's 49 UPKs. So we've got a ton of training out there for all of the different little nuances. Our training team has done a really fabulous job with putting this together to make sure that everyone has access to the training materials that they need. And I will go on. There's a couple of things we wanted to talk about with training. So travel admins can begin registering for their training today. If you are not in the pilot and you have not already been trained, we will have instructor-led classes for our travel admins, but our travel admins only. So if you are not a travel admin, please do not register. The classes begin on January 17th, and they will run through the 24th of February. So, a few days after go live, but that's all right. We will have some training dates, the multiple sessions of all the classes will be offered. So, you're not stuck to one date. I know there's vacations and conflicts and other work to be done on campus. It's not everybody just lives Concur all the time. And again, then please, register for the intro class because it is a prereq for all the classes. So when you go in, register, step through the UPKs. So you're ready for the first class. We know who all of the existing travel admins are in university-wide. So those folks should be looking for an email from our training lead, Laura Pugliano, coming soon. She'll have details on registration, and she's the point of contact for travel training. And again, I will put that link to the user aids and the training materials in chat as soon as I'm done presenting. So I will pause here. The next thing I have is the demo. Did we want to talk about any other questions before I jumped into the demo?
So just a couple of comments. Some of the listeners are getting confused by the acronyms. So just going forward, if you can clarify what you may be referencing for those who are not familiar, specifically the UPK, and I think John's title, they weren't sure what you were referring to. But I think we have clarity now in the chat. And then I believe you talked about where the training can be accessed.
Yes.
from
There's
the-
a link
okay.
right here on the presentation. I can't copy into the chat right now because where I had it is not letting me copy. Oh, maybe I can. Nope, can't. I will put it in chat as soon as I am done here and no longer sharing my screen.
And then
I
one
will
of the
put-
other questions that you did clarify, and I'll just reiterate, the question was, if we already have access as a travel administrator, do we have to get training for accessing the new system? And the answer is yes.
Yes, it is.
All travel admins need to be trained on concur specific understanding and transactions. So
Yes, that's exactly right. All travel admins need to be trained. The travel admins have to understand policy and procedures, and they have to be able to review trips and all the related expenses, as well as have an understanding of how Concur works from start to finish, right? Because they're involved every step of the way. So we are requiring that travel admins get trained, so they can continue to serve as that very valuable point of contact inside of departments for their travelers. They've served with eTravel for a very long time, done a really fabulous job, and we hope to carry that forward with Concur.
And then one other question that came in, how is the supervisor determined?
So the supervisor is determined as to whom the timesheet supervisor is in HRMS. The primary timesheet supervisor is who we loaded as the supervisor approval into Concur. All right. So the next thing I have is a demo of expense, and I will go ahead. I have to share a different screen to do that. So please bear with me just a moment.
Before you do that,
Yes, ma'am.
because the person who asked the question about the timesheet, they clarified that their GRAs do not have timesheets. And so I'm not sure what would be the requirement for those individuals if there's not a timesheet supervisor. Is it something that can be assigned?
Oh, Susan.
I'll take that. So in the HRMS system, I believe it's related to the learning management system. We've got another table for, specifically GRAs, and I think there was some of their class. And postdocs, I don't think or maybe they're doing timesheets now, but we do have a supervisor for them related to the learning management system. And so that's where we should be pulling that from. And it's kind of related that if you need to change the supervisor, you need to change it in HRMS. So that's where you would be, making that change. And, to think that there's a supervisor for the timesheet that's different than the supervisor for travel, it's the same, should be the same person. But as Luke had mentioned, with approvals, there's delegates. And within Concur, you could have that primary person is the supervisor, but they could also delegate. So there's a couple different ways if you really have a difference and meaningful, and not just for convenience.
Yes. All right. Anything else, Linnell?
No, everything else can wait till the end.
All right. So I am showing you a Concur screen. I'm logged in as a test user, as you can see on this, very purple bar up here, to show a business expense or an expense report. So when you log in, this is the screen. This is a similar screen to what you will see when you log into Concur. Yours as a real user will have a lot more going on it, but as a test user, we've only got a few things. So we have, you can click right here on your authorization requests to go to your requests.
We have one person, Luke, who can't see Concur on their screen, so I'm not sure if it's an individual issue, or I'm able to see your screen that says manage requests, so I'm not sure.
I think it's an individual issue. They may just need to find the screen that it's on and double click on it to make it larger. They may have, switched to my beautiful face to look at that while I'm presenting.
Okay, you can go ahead.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this is what you'll see when you go into your requests. All your requests, you can see, change it up, all active, what's not submitted, pending approval. If you're doing a lot, you can kind of filter the screen down. You can also see, what status they are very quickly just by looking at the colors, right? These are approved. This one's approved, this one's approved, this one's been returned. This one is submitted, and it's, you can see where it's pending, who it's with on that in the workflow. For this one, this is the town hall demo that I put in real quick to kind of show the whole process from expense to request. So after you get your request fully approved, this is a demo of an in-state trip. So I'm, just driving out to Frederick. You can hit create expense report. If this was a trip with a flight on it, up here you would see, after it's fully approved, you would see booking. You can go directly into Concur booking, takes you right in. The trip dates are defaulted in for your booking, and you can search. We showed that at the last town hall, and I can show that again if there's time. Or I can show the booking tool again if there's time, or we can show it in a future town hall as well. But for a trip that is just, in state, there's just a couple of things. You can come up here, you hit create expense report. And I am doing this in the live system, so if something goes horribly wrong, please bear with me. You can only stage so much in a live system. But anyway, after you get your request approved, you can go in and you go on your trip and you have your expenses. You can go in and you can hit, create expense report, and it automatically populates the expense report with everything that you did on your trip. And then it tells you up here at the top, what you have to fill in. So if you need a receipt, it'll tell you need an image of the receipt. If you need an explanation for something, it tells you that what you're missing to get your expense report fully inside of all of the policy rules we could write in, so you can submit. Some of these are hard stops. They won't let you submit. Some of these are warning stops that will continue to let you submit even if you don't have it. But you can see, so this is, did my mileage calculation begin or end from home? So I can go in. You can also come down here to the line items and see what alerts are on there. So for my personal car mileage, I can show you the mileage calculator tool, but so did my trip begin or end from home? So I can say yes, because my trip in this case did begin from home. And I think this trip is going to Frederick. So I want to go get Glory Donuts. This is not an appropriate business trip to go get Glory Donuts, just to let you know, but for the purposes of the demo, that's what we're using.
Luke,
And if you haven't been to Frederick to go
Luke.
get Glory Donuts, I highly recommend you.
Luke,
Yes, ma'am.
just slow down a bit. You're going a little too fast for some of the listeners.
I apologize. I do speak very quickly. I do apologize. I will take a breath. All right. So our mileage calculator, this is what I was telling you about during the changes. When you're putting in a request, you can, put in your address, starting point, where you're going. You can make it a round trip because obviously you got to go home at some point. And you can also put in for your commute, right? Where you live, where you work, and then deduct your commute round trip. It does give you, like I said, step-by-step directions on how to get there. And then you can add this mileage to your expense. And so it takes your normal commute mileage and it deducts it from your business expense, your business commuting mileage, and the net positive. If there's if it's more business miles, it calculates it, multiplies it by the expense mileage reimbursement rate, and then puts that right onto your expense report. So that's the mileage calculator. Very nice. No more maps. You just put it all in there and you hit calculate. On the expense side, you do have to do an explanation after you're doing your expense report, and then did your trip begin or end from home? So if you're leaving from the office, you might have to change, where your starting point was. And then it does calculate the distance and the amount, and it does give you the reimbursement rate. And we follow USM's reimbursement rate, and USM follows the IRS reimbursement rate on sometimes a time lag. So IRS may make an update. It may be a little bit before USM puts out a new policy, and then we will make the same update. So I have answered the warnings on my expense, so I'm going to save it, and you will see that it clears those. See, so now I don't have any angry red check marks. On these next ones, I will need an expense or a receipt to show that I did pay $10 for parking. So you can upload your receipt here. I would be I would like to say that if you were planning on, like, if you have a Word document of all your receipts, you had taken pictures or screenshots, you can't upload the Word document. You have to upload. You can print it to PDF and upload it, but .doc and .xls or .xlsx and .docx no longer work. You have to use one of these types, which are image types. Now, if you had been using the Concur app while you were on your trip, you could have taken a picture of your receipt and it would already be here. And then you wouldn't have to do this step. And then you wouldn't have to save your little receipt. You know, you say, oh, I paid parking, let me take a picture, it uploads it, and then I just put that in the trash, right? And it's easier on everyone. But for the purposes of the demo, I'm just gonna attach this. Oh, excuse me, attach my parking receipt. Thank you, Susan. And then you can see parking receipt here, right? It gives you a little explanation. You can put an explanation of your parking. You can enter your vendor name, city of purchase, if you would like. Those are not required fields for parking. And then for business meals. So I went to Frederick and I went to Glory Donuts to have a business meal. That's the explanation of my business meal. Then I have to put my the city of purchase. Did I not spell Frederick right? I didn't. Oh man, that's embarrassing. I'm gonna chalk it up to nerves. And then I will enter my receipt here and attach my business meals receipt. And then I have to add attendees to my business meal. I have to say, you know, who was there, who attended this business meal to make sure that it's, you know, within appropriate policies. So I will add my attendee. Now, in the live system, you will see a full list of all UMB personnel here, right? Because I'm logged in as a test user, I do not have UMB personnel here. I only have our test users. So I'll add myself, and then I will add a guest. And I will create a new attendee to say who my guest was. And I went out to Glory Donuts to see my friend Greg Bodie. This is a trip that is wildly outside of policy and will not be approved, but that's what we're going to use for the demo. So I created my attendee. Now it's, you know, documented on my expense report who went to my business meal of donuts. Man, now I'm kind of hungry for a donut. So I'm going to hit save expense. And again, you will see that angry checkbox or that angry red explanation point is out. So this is a warning to make sure that, you know, to remind users to deduct your commute miles or use the explanation field as to why you wouldn't. Again, this isn't a hard stop. It's just trying to remind folks to make sure that if they're going on a business trip, they also deduct their, you know, commuting miles to stay within policy. And then after all of that, I will hit submit and I will accept and continue because I'm, you know, signing this agreement to say that everything is within policy and above board, although it's, in this case, my donuts are not. And then this shows you, you know, this is the summary of, you know, I'm requesting $97.50 to be paid by the company to me. And I will hit submit report. And then this kicks off the workflow. And so as I can see here, where's my town hall demo? It is sitting with the travel administrator for approval. And that is our expense demo. Any questions?
Luke?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you mind going up to the header timeline and just showing them quickly how they can see who all the approvers are?
Oh, sure. If I open my town hall demo expense report, I can go to report timeline, and it will show me, you know, who the steps are in my approval workflow. So this is with my test, or this, excuse me, this is with the test department travel admin, and then with my test supervisor approver. And then it would go to my cost center approval and then to my central office approval. And so as this moves through the workflow, you can see where it is. If I messed up my, I didn't attach something correctly, or if I, didn't include an expense, I can't always recall my report, bring it back to me, make changes, send it back into the workflow. It will have to go fully back through the workflow at that point. So if I, parked twice, if I had to move my car and had 2 parking charges and I needed to add another line item, I could do that, but it would just, go back fully through the workflow. So, just be aware.
And I think just to be clear that in that report timeline where it had the test, supervisor, that's what we have in as like the first and last name. That would be a real person's name that you would see. It just, we made that to clarify for our testing purposes. And the other thing, can you just open up the header? I don't think we talked about that in terms of the same questions that we have in the current system. Identifying, describing the benefit, the justification. If, you didn't do the travel request or you didn't book and concur, that's what, when it's being routed for the exception, those will need to be complete. And answers like, I didn't know is, it's going to be hard to be able to say that that's really justifiable. So, and then, additional information that, when you need to, put in more information. And unfortunately, we could only have one very large field on the header. We named additional information. So that describe the benefit is very limited. And to that extent, that additional information might be where you're putting in more of your information going forward.
And I should note, and this is, on each one of these individual lines, you can allocate and split out the charges. So if my department was covering $5 of parking and another department was covering the other $5 of parking, I can split that allocation out to make sure that the appropriate areas get charged. If you're splitting this among, several grants or, whatever it is, you can put all of that in there. And it does save those allocations. So if you're using a similar allocation on multiple trips, it becomes a lot easier after you enter it the first time to just, click the saved allocations. What else do we have?
One question that we have is, can you confirm that the expense report will not flow to the traveler for approval if being submitted by the travel admin?
So if the travel admin creates the expense report, they cannot submit on the traveler's behalf. The traveler will have to go in, or the traveler, if the travel admin is the delegate for the traveler, or the traveler can have another different delegate, but the traveler will still have to go in and hit submit after they review the expense report. And then
so
the new
is, in the current system, it's the travel admin role that allows a person to create a report for another employee. In Concur, they're actually different roles. You can be a delegate. So the person who's potentially just an admin assistant who is collecting, the receipts and doesn't really have to know a lot, about all of our travel policy and procedures. They could be set up as a delegate. And then when they, actually it's like a notify employee, the employee goes in, has to validate everything, can potentially add to the, whether it's a request or expense form. And in some cases, if there's a missing receipt declaration, that the employee actually has to add that. A delegate cannot do that on behalf of an employee because they're certifying that, yep, I really spent this and, I don't have a receipt and such. But I think that's something that's, kind of new, and departments are going to need to really think about who is their true travel admin and who is just, someone who can do the clerical work and create those. So that's something that's different. It can be the same person. Your travel admin can also be a delegate, but they can be different now. But ultimately that the submit is the employee approving, and we have that in our current system. Today, a travel admin can prepare, but the employee, it has to go back for their approval. Well, technically in Concur, it just means they're submitting the report.
Thank you, Susan.
That was the only question related to the report. I just want to remind the listeners that I am recording all of the questions that are coming through the chat. Some of them are the same question, just stated a different way. So if we don't answer the question within the town hall, we will respond to the questions and send this out via Teams so that everyone is aware of what the responses actually are.
Thank you, Linnell. So if we don't have any more questions, that was it for my part of the presentation. I can turn this over.
Well, before you
Yes.
turn it over to Cindy,
Yes, ma'am.
there are some just general questions that Susan can probably answer if you're done presenting. I just wasn't gonna.
Yes,
Lump
yes,
them
I
up
am
in
done
another
presenting.
section.
I will happily turn this over to someone else.
Okay, so just a couple that I think need a little bit of explanation. Someone asks, is there a way for us to look up listed approvers, supervisors, or travel administrators by department to see who has either signed up or attended the training? So I guess being able to see various approvers within a department, is there a way for them to see that?
Is there a way for folks to see who the approver is for their department? Is that what or to see who is,
Or was it training?
or is it training?
I think it's a combination of both because they have slash. So it's
Okay.
a matter of knowing who the approvers are in their department, but also I guess determining who has attended training.
So on the training side, we can let Laura address that. But within the system, that on an individual basis, you'd be able to see. But I'm not quite sure if there's any seated reports that we're going to be able to put out there.
If
That
we
if you're
need
a travel admin, you can look at
Right.
individually by opening
Right.
up the person's profile. But to that extent, yeah, there's not a.
we can
you know,
absolutely build a report that will show departments, who is the approver for which org, and then I'm sure that we can identify delegates within that too, as well, for a larger scale report.
I mean, at some point we're going to have to, because we have the requirements for the entitlement reports and, pulling from that system. But that is something to be determined.
We are using the time for the pilot to build out various custom reports, working with both Concur folks as well as our own internal experts who have put a lot of time into learning the reporting tool. Alina, Voy, and Willa Fan.
Susan, can you talk a little bit to how non-employees will be handled? Because there's two different questions in the chat. I guess one of them was, would there be a separate town hall for non-employees, which the answer is no. But I think if you just talk in general to how non-employees will be handled in the new system, that may help give some clarity to their concern.
So, as you know, as of July 1st this year, that we in Office of the Controller decided that we were going to process all non-employee expense reports through Quantum Financials as a non-PO invoice. And so going forward, that's going to remain the same. But that means the request still needs to be done within Concur. And in order to do a request, we have to set up a non-employee as a user in the system. So there's going to be a form where a department is going to request that, and it's going to be in Luke's shop, and most likely Alina will be the name of the person setting these people up, where she would be setting up, these user profiles, or between sets. I'm sorry, that probably isn't Alina. There's going to be a form that department will, and you'll identify who the person is, what's their default SOPF that it needs to be charged to, who's going to be the delegate, because the non-employees are not going to go into Concur. This is all done just for UMB purposes of knowing that, if you're going to be follow, I mean, and it's not all situations where you need to have the request, but certainly if we're paying, and you want to book the airfare through Concur on behalf of them, perhaps you're bringing in a candidate for an interview. And if we're going to, do their airfare, you need to have the request. So we'll have a process and, we'll detail this out about, the steps that you need to do. But the non-employee is not going to be in the system. It will be that delegate that's preparing it. And, obviously they don't have a supervisor, and, be a travel admin and a fiscal approver that goes on that request. And, same thing, if there's airfare that needs to be booked, then, as the delegate can, do that booking for them. So I didn't see the question, so I don't know if that's addressing all the non-employee issues or if that was,
Yes, I think some of the, because some of these questions are very much in the weeds, so this is why we just need to respond offline to some of them. But I think that helps the general questions about the non-employee. And then one other question is, if someone takes personal time on a conference trip, I guess they want a little understanding on how the airfare portion will work if there's personal time included in a trip.
So, I mean, that's really about kind of business process, as it is today, that at the time that you're booking the trip, you want to be identifying up front and actually on the request that we have a question, is there going to be personal travel associated with this? And if yes, you need to explain about it. And we have a warning in there saying at the time you're doing the request is when you need to document the difference in cost. So if you're, going to add on some personal travel, perhaps at the beginning or the end of your trip, and the airfare is going to cost more, you need to show that difference at the time you're doing that booking. Or, you need to produce a copy of, this is the airfare. If I was just traveling, let's say, to this conference on the days of the conference, this is the airfare when, by adding on this personal trip. So we can see, what that difference is. Obviously, if there's, no difference at all, or, the difference, it's cheaper to do it, then, you've got that documented up front. The problem comes in when you do have, or you get the expense form, and now, you say there's, personal, that you can't go back in and get that fee, when you book the flight from, a month prior. So that's very important. And that's why we put in actually a warning there. When you do say yes to personal travel, you're going to get that yellow triangle saying, remember to document the differences in your personal travel as part of the request at the time you're making that. So, we are trying to be cognizant of those changes and how it should be documented, because, that is something that is, has been a problem for us when at the end, when they're doing the expense. But, to the extent that, you're searching for airfare and, you're doing the booking before you're doing the request, you're most likely going to go to our booking tool and do the search and find out what are the airfares. You take a screen print. There's a feature where you can do a print or an email of kind of what the available flights are. And that would be your supporting documentation at the time you do the request.
Thank you. And one final question. Do we need to submit requests for day trips prior to the trip?
So day trips, as long as it's all within Maryland or DC, do not, or you're not using a car rental, that you do not do a request. So that has not changed from our current practice. But if it's a day trip and I'm going to, Pennsylvania, Gettysburg, then it's out of state. So you do require a request.
Thank you. As I mentioned before, I think some of the other questions we can respond to after the town hall. I'm going to condense them because some of them are repetitive to make sure that it's clear what the question was and then our responses. So we will send that out after. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Luke.
Yep, thank you.
Luke, a lot of these questions that are coming in, I'm looking at them on the side as they're coming in. They're dealt with in training too, so you'll get a more detailed description and can ask questions during the training sessions.
Yeah, for travel admins, the live training, you can absolutely, have that, ask lots of questions. Again, I'd like to offer, if you have questions for your department on how you want to structural approvals or have any departmental specific questions, please reach out. We can schedule some time to, come out and to talk with, your specific org folks to handle any questions. And then obviously, as John said, please step through the training, right? The UPK link is out there. I will get those links in chat right now. My dog is going nuts. I apologize. And, step through the UPKs, and that should answer some questions as well. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation if we're ready. Let me share my screen. So I have my presentation up on the screen. Please let me know if you can't see it. I am Cindy Lyons, and I'm the University Controller. My office oversees the policy and the procedure for the business travel. And so before I begin, I wanted to thank everybody for attending today's town hall, but I also wanted to make a special thank you to Luke and the project team, the advisory council and the executive team members, all for all the collaboration and the work that's been done on the Concur project. I think it's amazing that a project of this scope and complexity has been rolled out in a relatively short period of time. So congratulations to the Concur project team. So we'll take a look at the business travel policy, the procedure, job aids, upcoming events. We have included contact information, and we'll take questions along the way using the same format that was used during Luke's portion of the presentation. To begin with, for those who may not know, we do have a travel website in the Office of the Controller, and that website houses information on approvals, booking travel, making payments, requesting reimbursements. So we encourage everybody to bookmark the travel website. It makes it easier. Plus, we will be updating it as we get closer to go live. So please take advantage of that. When the slides are sent out to the attendees, these links are active links, so you can just click on them. Let's begin with the policy. So a policy is the guiding principles for decision making, and policies authorize the procedures. And I say that because I want to make sure that we understand that the procedures carry the weight of the policy. So procedures are incorporated into the policy. They're not discretionary. So please know that policy and procedures can be used interchangeably, but the policy focuses on the why. Why do we have rules on business travel for employees and non-employees? The revised policy is in progress. It has been reviewed by multiple stakeholders and is currently in the University Policy Office for review. Basically, the changes, because the policy is high level, it doesn't go through the actual steps for processing travel transactions. The changes in the policy are high level. Specifically, we added emphasis on safety and security, and we're including the new global hub information into the policy. The procedures, they're a bit more involved, more detailed, lengthy. They describe the rules on how to approve, book, and pay for travel expenses. There are two different procedures, one for employee and one for non-employee. The revised procedures are also in progress. We have had some reviews by some stakeholders, but as we're nearing completion of the pilot processing in Concur that is going on now, we'll be able to finalize the procedures and get them prepared for final approval and publication. The ultimate goal is to have the policy and the procedures available to the campus as quickly as possible for review and to prepare for the Concur rollout, but hopefully no later than the end of January to give folks time to look at them and to become familiar with the policies and procedures. So particularly in the procedure, the changes that we've highlighted are the concur enhancements that Luke had mentioned earlier in his presentation. We also needed to update the procedure to accommodate terminologies and changes in processing due to the rollout of quantum financials, to incorporate the new global hub, which Dan will be talking a little bit about later on in this presentation, to also, in compliance with policy, include safety and security measures and the importance of following those directives. And then finally, in today's world, our procedure references environmental health and safety, Steve Deck's group for insurance-related concerns and questions. That has been moved over to the enterprise risk management group. This is new. We're developing job aids. Our webpage is up. We are populating job aids as we get them finished. But our job aids is like a one step lower than the procedures, where they're just detailed one-page documents. They might be narrative, or they might be visual diagrams to assist users in understanding policy and procedure. As an aside, I'll just mention that as Luke talked about the training, there will be the tutorials available that would be geared to the system, but our job aids in the Office of the Controller will be geared towards the policy and procedures. There, for example, specific topics might be meals or mileage. You know, if I'm just, that's all I want to do in Luke's example, just drive to Frederick. I want to know what do I need to do so I can be reimbursed for my mileage and how much that will be. That would be covered in a job aid. That'll be a simple one-page document in our new job aids library. In preparation for the concur rollout, we will be moving to using Travel Leaders as our travel agency. So we ask that the users departments please discontinue charging Globetrotter and Omega Travel to UMB as of December 23rd. So you'll be hearing and you'll see in the concur system the terminology ghost card. The ghost card is the UMB credit card that is used when making reservations through a travel agency. And so we will be closing the ghost card for Globetrotter and Omega accounts effective January 1st, 2023. And we wanted to allow some time for any cleanup work, any stragglers, so that by the end of February, by February 20th, everybody's on board, understanding that Travel Leaders will be our travel agency. Now, if you have unused tickets with Globetrotter and Omega, you can certainly continue to use those. But any new charges after January 1st will be denied. And you can always use Travel Leaders. Okay. We do have upcoming events. We have bi-weekly travel talks. These are hosted by our resident expert, India Lewis, and these are held every other week. They're 1-hour discussions at 10 o'clock in the morning. Our next one is December 14th, and they are WebEx, and this is the link here. We will publish a schedule of when these talks occur on our webpage. But I encourage everybody with questions, need clarification. I see all the questions that are coming through the town hall. This is an opportunity to get your specific one-on-one attention, answers to maybe specific questions to your office that would be helpful for you in understanding any changes that are coming up. So please mark this slide and be aware that the travel talks, it's a recurring opportunity for you, and everyone is welcome. You don't have to ask questions. You can just attend and maybe learn something new. We also encourage sharing ideas, especially when we're rolling out something new. This is an opportunity to say, well, this is how we do it, and this works really well. And we do a lot of cross collaboration that way. Our next travel professionals group meeting, we hold these quarterly. Travel professionals group is also known as TPG for short. So our next one is tentatively scheduled for February 1st from 10 to 12. We're waiting for a room confirmation. We'd like to have a hybrid environment. And in that quarterly meeting on February 1st, we're going to focus on policy and procedure, international operations, and enterprise risk management. So we'll have some folks from other offices available to answer questions, to present information relevant to their areas. We encourage these meetings. It's also a time to come together and share experiences as well. So you will hear more about that. More information will be posted coming soon. We'd also like to have travel leaders come out, representatives from the travel agency, do another campus-wide presentation. We did have one, I think it was 2 years ago, where they presented to the campus what types of services they provide, support services. They were available to answer questions related to ticketing, customer service, and so forth. So more information on that will also be forthcoming. And finally, I wanted to mention that we all know that the learning management system that's owned by HR is currently going under a change to Precipio. So that curriculum that's required for new travel administrators and travel approvers is in the process of being upgraded or changed, I guess, to accommodate concur. So that will be coming up as well in the early part of 2023. So we will also communicate information about the learning management system curriculum. That's policy and procedure training. That's different than the training that's offered by Luke's group related specifically to concur. And finally, the contact information for our office for all questions related to travel, please send them to the travel help desk. And we have multiple people that monitor that email address that can assist you for your questions. And that's all I have. Do we have any questions, Linnell?
The only question was about being able to link from the travel page to concur. And I just mentioned in the chat that yes, there will be a link on the travel page. We're currently making some updates to that travel page. So we will cut down on the need to visit multiple sites and be able to access information.
Great. Thank you, Linnell, for monitoring the chat box. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dan, over in International Operations, and he has some information related to international travel.
And Dan, before you start, if there's anyone on this call that would like to be added to the travel professionals group, please send an email to the travel help email, travelhelp@umaryland.edu, and we'll get you added onto that list so that you'll be aware of any announcements or updates that we send out. All yours, Dan. Thank you. Dan might be having technical issues. While we wait for Dan, there was one question, Susan, if you don't mind answering. The question is, will travel leaders automatically see the approved travel request in concur? we currently have to send them an approval before the tickets are confirmed.
So one of the beauties of the new Concur system is this online booking. And when you do the request and you're actually doing your booking, it's through TLC, but you never have to talk to an actual travel agent. So in that case, they don't need to see the travel request, although they will have access to it. We also have one of the booking things is what we're calling an agent assist. So if you have a complicated, and you know, a lot of times it's on the international where you got multiple legs and stops and things, that you might want to consider talking to the travel agency. That we found that sometime, or what they've told us is that they can sometimes get a better discount just based on the way that they can suggest a routing that might be than what would be presented through the online booking. So if you do have, you know, a more and even domestically, if you had a complicated trip with many legs, you might want to do that travel agent assist. And in that case, what happens is when your request gets to the approved status, that there's an email that's going to be fired off to TLC. Now, they're not going to pick up the phone and call you, but they're going to have it in their queue and be expecting a phone call from the traveler or the admin, whoever's, you know, going to, you know, make the arrangements. So they'll have access to the system. So yes, you're not sending it to them, you know, via email or faxing or you know, it's all within the system, and they have the access to see, you know, and that's where in the request, the more information that you put in there. I don't know, you know, we didn't do the request today, but when you're booking your flight, it asks for, you know, a time. And, you know, it's kind of like, what, you know, my request, why is that? Well, if you're booking the flight, then when you're searching for your travel, that just has more information in there. So same thing that, you know, if you're engaging a travel agent, that the more specifics that you have in that request, it can help them. Although, you know, certainly you can tell them when you're talking to them over the phone to do it, but that's the way it's going to work. So fully integrated.
One other question while we wait for Dan, or international. If we have travel after the new system is in place, in parentheses, they put April, should we wait to do our request until after the new system is launched?
So
there's going to, yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I say, you know, there's going to be a period of overlap, and we're not, you know, going to say wholesale, everything that was done in the current system has to be replicated. So ideally that, you know, if you're going to be traveling in let's say in April, so we should be going live at the end of February. If you're going to be traveling in April or let's say in May, and it's like, all right, well, you can wait until maybe the beginning of March to be doing your travel request and booking your flight. We're saying hold off, you know, don't put it in the old system, knowing that there's still, you know, 2 months ahead of your flight, and then you can put it into the new system. But if you're going to be traveling at the beginning of March and you want to buy your ticket, you know, at least a month ahead of time, you're not part of the pilot, go ahead and put it in the old system. But if you've done a request, if the request was required in the old system and you've already done it there, we're going to allow you to complete your expense form in that same system too. At some point, there's going to have to be a cutoff that, you know, we don't want to keep two systems going for a long period of time. But essentially, any new requests that we would, you know, block new requests from being completed in the old system after, you know, shortly after we go live with the, you know, full campus. But but if you had an expense report, because, you know, we are tying, and we've got those rules that if you didn't do the request in Concur, then you're going to, you know, it's going to get routed to Dawn, and she doesn't need to all these extra ones when you had done it in the old system. We're not going to make you do that double work. So we're, you know, we're trying to manage that, and you know, hopefully that, you know, and if there's, you know, an exception, and there's nothing to say that if you did put a request through the old system and you want to replicate it in the new system just to make it all, you really like Concur and the way it works, then, you know, we certainly say, you know, go ahead and do that as well.
So I can't tell if Dan has joined back because he shifted on my screen, so I have no idea.
I am back. I
Okay.
think I'm all set. Sorry about it. I had some technical issues right when I had to start.
No problem. Okay, well, I'll turn it right on back over to you.
So I'm gonna share my screen. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to join the town hall and give a short presentation about the International Operations Department. My name is Dan Fabro, and I'm the new International Travel Specialist within the International Operations Department. Before joining the University of Maryland, Baltimore, I gained experience in the field of international security and international travel in both the private and public sectors. Before I started to talk about my role and how I can support staff, faculty, and students to prepare for the international trips, I would like to spend a few words about the International Operations Department. What is the International Operations Department? In partnership with the Center for Global Engagement, CG, International Operations works to ensure seamless support of UMB's global activities through the Global Hub by providing specialized support to UMB units in procurement, finance, human resources, compliance, and in the specific case of Ken and I, international travel, safety, and security. As of today, we are a team of 9 people, soon to be 11, and we have 5 members in the US, while 4 are in Africa, more precisely in Zambia, Kenya, Tanzania, and Malawi. In our capacity, Ken and I will help the UMB in its goal to strengthen the university's capability to cope with the new international challenges that could affect international travel. One of our main priorities is to empower personnel to make responsible decisions by better understanding the complex environments in which we operate and travel. Our role is to make safety and security an enabler of UMB international research and program. Therefore, we are investing in resources that will develop innovative tools and systems to minimize safety and security risks to our faculty, staff, and students, while maximizing the impact of UMB's international research and programs. A good strategy for minimizing the risks while traveling is to be prepared before traveling. This is why we have provided 6 steps to follow in preparation for travel on the Global Hub webpage. As you can see in this page, the first step is to take personal safety and security training. It is not mandatory today, but we highly recommend taking them before traveling, especially if your destination country is a high-risk location. Ken will explain this better later. Second, get an understanding of the country where you are traveling. Is it a low-risk location or a high-risk one? You can find all this information in International SOS, but if you need further clarification, Ken and I would be glad to meet with you to provide a security assessment and answer any questions you might have. Third, as you have understood the level of risk of your travel destination, make sure to sign the International Traveler Attestation Form, which confirms your acknowledgement of the risk related to your travel. Fourth, submit your travel request in the UMB e-travel system or concur if you're part of the pilot group right now. And as the proposal gets approved, book your trip through Travel Leaders, which is the UMB authorized travel agency. Finally, as a last step, download the International SOS app and print a copy of the International SOS membership card to carry with you. Now, I will have Ken give you more details about the pre-travel and while traveling procedures from a safety and security standpoint.
All right, thank you, Dan. My name is Ken Nisbet, and I'm UMB's International Safety and Security Manager. Prior to joining the university, I spent 6 years working for a UN agency in a security role. And prior to that, I also worked in open source intelligence analysis and risk management in the private sector. I'd like to take a few minutes to further discuss how international operations help support safety and security for UMB's international programs. So via, Dan, I think we might have lost the slide deck. Everybody still see it?
No. No, we don't. We no longer see it.
Okay. Go ahead and I'll let Dan bring that back.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry about it.
Yep. Okay, so via our global hub, we provide links to security training offered by disasterready.org, one of the largest information clearinghouses for humanitarian and development workers. In particular, we highly recommend the Personal Safety and Security Certificate Trainings, which is a multi-module suite of courses designed by the security team at Save the Children, a global humanitarian relief organization. While the full certificate can be earned in roughly 2.5 hours, you can develop a good foundation for international safety and security in as little as 35 minutes via learn at your own pace modules on personal safety and security, pre-travel considerations, and vehicle travel and road safety. And while these trainings are not currently required before travel, we highly recommend these courses and hope to expand our training offerings in the coming weeks and months. We're also happy to meet with you to discuss safety and security considerations ahead of your trip. We can work with our information providers, counterparts at other institutions and agencies, and colleagues in the field in order to advise on practical matters on your trip, ranging from security conditions at your destination to hotel accommodation and transport considerations. And while we strongly recommend this for any travel to a high or extreme risk destination, we are also happy to speak with you if you have any questions, no matter how small or trivial you think they are. The more we know about what you're concerned about, the better we can assist you in getting the information you need to have a safe and productive experience while traveling internationally. As far as we're concerned, the only bad question is an unasked one, so please feel free to reach out to us whenever you've got a question. And I'll now take a few moments to talk about how international operations support you while you're traveling. One of the ways in which we do so is by leveraging the considerable resources that International SOS provides to its clients. International SOS is one of the largest and most sophisticated emergency medical and security providers in the world, and their services are available to all UMB personnel, ranging from students, faculty, and staff to persons conducting business on UMB's behalf. International SOS can provide information, guidance, and support via its worldwide network of regional assistance centers. So let's say that you were traveling overseas and started to feel ill. You can place a call to International SOS and get information about medical facilities in your area. And in the event that you needed emergency treatment, International SOS will work with international operations here at UMB to make sure that you get the best care available, even if it means a medical evacuation to another country or even back to the US. While this type of benefit is covered by UMB's insurance, we still encourage you to make sure that your normal health insurance provides international options should you need to seek more routine care, medical care while traveling internationally. And International SOS also maintains an extensive network of security providers and can also assist in the event of a major security incident. International SOS also integrates a sophisticated travel tracking tool with UMB's travel management system. So once you book with UMB's travel agency, your itinerary is automatically uploaded into International SOS's system. And in the event of a major incident, this allows for us to quickly determine who could be in the affected area, account for their safety and security, and ultimately provide assistance as needed. And of course, we're all concerned about privacy. So let me emphasize that this is based on itinerary data, and this system cannot be used to track you in real time unless you manually register your location via their mobile app. And more information on International SOS, as well as their mobile app for both iPhone and Android systems, can be found on the Global Hub. And also, we are working to fully develop our international safety and security incident reporting line, which will operate on a 24/7 basis and allow you to connect with International Operations Duty Officer to report an incident or to get support and guidance as necessary. I'll now go ahead and turn it back over to Dan, who will conclude by talking about how you can get a hold of us.
Thank you very much, Ken. So just to recap, as a team, we're always available to answer any questions regarding international travel. The best practice to submit your queries is through the Global Hub ticketing system. So you can reach out to us through globalhub@umaryland.edu, which will help us keep track of all the requests and reply more efficiently. However, we also encourage you to contact us via email or to request in-person meeting to discuss travel plans and learn how our team can best support your international programs. Thanks for your attention, and we look forward to working with you. And that's it. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask.
There aren't currently any questions in the chat related to international travel. So Luke, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Oh, yeah, yes, me.
Can I interject? Just tying together the international with concur, is that that's something new for us that we have programmed within the system, that any of those requests that you're indicating your main destination as being, within concur, a level 3 travel risk rating on a scale of 5 or higher needs to be approved by the international office. So up front, that they're going to be notified that, you're intending on going. And so it provides that connection. Now, if a country is only at level risk 1 or 2, it doesn't go to them, but you might still have those concerns, but they're just not going to be aware of those, on a proactive or having that flow through to them. But, having access to be able to see the trips will be important. But it's also, we're relying on Concur has a contractor with, they're using a different firm. We use International SOS for our safety and security support. They use a company called Riskline. So it'll just be double. It's quite possible there are different security ratings between the two, but we thought if we brought it down on a scale of 1 to 5, a level 3 for routing, then international operations, that they will be making those decisions about, what you need to know and bring it to your attention if you hadn't thought of things up front. But that is something new. We don't have that electronic routing for international approval within our current system.
All right, I can do a short demo of the booking area, the trip search, real quick if folks are interested. I'll go ahead and share my screen. We did show this last time, and here I thought I was done for today, but we did show this last time at the last town hall. But this is, the booking feature, the trip search in Concur. So after you have an approved travel request, you can click, move to booking or book your trip, and then it takes you here. When you log into Concur, you will also see a very similar screen with a trip search function. And I would ask that while you should search away, you look but don't book, because you need approved travel request to book. The other thing that I want to note is that when you log into Concur for the first time, please set up your user profile. This is pretty critical that we get folks to set up their user profile. And this is, the information that's in there is, this is a so this is obviously a test user, but so all of this information is not real. But your name and everything comes in, your employee ID, your work address comes in from HRMS, but information like your home address, emergency contact information, or your contact information, excuse me, your emergency contact information, any travel preferences that you may have that will help, the search function, any frequent traveler programs that you have, you can add your program, put that number right in here, so Concur automatically has it, and you get all your points or your miles. You can put in your secure flight, your pre-check number, your passports can be saved, and your credit cards. So if you wanted to be using Concur on your personal card, if you wanted to book on your personal card, you can enter all that information here, and then it's stored in Concur. You don't have to store your credit card information in, but I would very much ask that you fill in your emergency contact and the rest of that required information before you do anything else inside of Concur. And certainly before you book a trip. But again, you come in and you have this trip search functionality. So I normally fly out of Baltimore, Washington Airport. And I want to go, I don't know, I want to go see my sister. She lives in the Netherlands. Oh, you know, there we go, Schiphol. And so I'll leave this Saturday, and you can set your depart and arrive, when you're coming back dates, what times you want to look at, and then your plus or minus how many hours. So if I set this for 9 a.m., plus or minus 5 hours, it'll search, the 10-hour swing, 5 hours before 9 a.m., 5 hours after 9 a.m. I can filter, I can add more parameters in here, what class I want to fly, search by price or schedule if I want to specify carrier. But I'm just going to hit search. And then you can kind of see the dashboard that, the interface that comes up when, oh, well, this is delightful. So this may be because I'm logged in as a test user, and I apologize. So
yeah, something with the travel profile it's indicating. So that's why it's very important you get that.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So what I will do is I can go into my own Concur, and I can kind of show you the same feature. I'll just have to be very careful because once it's booked in Concur, it's real, right? This is live. This is live. We'll do it live. So this is when you log into Concur, this is what you'll see. So you can see the company notes, right? First-time users must update their user profile. Your UPK links are here. Your first-time user checklist is here. That first-time user checklist is available on the user aids on the travel pages. Office of the Controller travel is linked, as well as the Global Hub travel pages is linked. And then we have some reminders about, anything that we need. This may change from time to time as things come up or, as they happen. So you can see that once you have a trip booked. So this is a trip that I'm taking in February of next year. It'll list it out on here. And also if you book through Concur, it'll automatically integrate with the TripIt app. If you are not familiar with the TripIt app, we have access to TripIt Pro, and you can track your flights, you can track your hotel, your car, everything is in one app. You get notifications if there's delays or cancellations or anything along those lines right on the app, pushed right to you. So again, I'm going to go see my sister in Amsterdam. Let's try this again. And you can see, what pops up. It does take a minute, or it can take a minute depending on what your search parameters are. And again, you can, change your search, you can specify carrier. And so it'll load all of the trips that are out there. And you'll see the same trips on Travelocity, on Expedia, on Kayak, on, whatever it is, whatever site you're using. It's the same global distribution network that everyone uses is pulled into Concur.
And can I just, I had seen a question there about, the faculty who like to book their own flights. Well, I think that, this is giving them that opportunity to be able to come in and see, just as you said, Kayak, Expedia, they all operate with this type of search. And, if you want to change the dates, and, I can understand why people didn't want to go through our travel agencies before, because you're relying on the travel agent to potentially, how much searching are they going to do? So I think we really need to figure out a way to, to get to, whether it's our faculty or other groups of people who are, very insistent on saying, I want to be able to book my own flights. They've got the same tools to be able to do that. They just need to do it within the system here. So getting that message out, I think, is going to be really important for our compliance and, communicating that, it should be just as easy to do it here as it would be just on your own.
Yeah, like I said, I booked my flight to St. Louis. It was super, super simple. Right through Concur. So you can see the Delta, American. You can see multiple airlines if you're taking, different legs on different airlines. KLM, which is the Dutch carrier, all the way all the way through. You can see all the flights, you can view their fares, you can shop by schedule instead. So if I select, say this one, I'm leaving at 6 in the morning, connecting, with an Air France flight, and then, my return trip. How do I want to come home on that day? And then you can, change your return times, you can change your dates and search and filter to really find the flights that you want, right? You can get pretty complex in here if you need to. So that is this. Do we have any questions? Oh, if you're just looking for a trip to get a request in, a travel request in, you need an estimate on the price. You can look this up, and then you can hit, you can email this to yourself, and it will email, your trip, the itineraries, what is available for you to attach to your travel request. So, if your travel admin is reviewing it, they can see, how you came to that number for the price, and that it was, one of the lowest, the lowest price out there. It's all within policy. So if I can keep going, I can select this one. I'm not actually going to book this flight, obviously, but just to show, you can then review your flights and view fares. You can make sure that we're in, you see this green check mark, confirms with our travel policy rules. And then it'll load, and you can do the same thing for the other fare. See your review, passport obviously required, who the traveler is, where you are. You can select your seats if that's available. Review your price. You can add your credit card or use the UMB card, and then any notices come down here. So, and then if you did not add your frequent flyer programs to your user profile, you can add them here. Add your program to make it all, work. I'm going to cancel this so I don't accidentally book this and then have to, call our travel agency and explain what I was doing. But that's, that's the booking tool. So again, in the next town hall, I'd like to demo some of the mobile applications. So I will be continuing to try to figure out how the best way to do that to a 200-person audience on Microsoft Teams. It may just be screenshots, and I apologize. But if I can get a dynamic one in there, I will try to do that.
Luke, 2 questions related to the booking. One, are they able to book West flights? And are they
Yes.
looking for the most economical flights available?
Yes, you can book Southwest flights. That's actually how I'm flying to St. Louis, because Southwest is the only one that has a direct flight. And yes and no on the economical ones, right? No one wants to take a flight with 4 layovers if they can take a direct flight. So as long as as long as the exception to the cheapest flight is justified, you can send that through. It doesn't stop you from booking anything. In the app, you just have to, make sure it's reviewed by the travel administrator and your supervisor and the call center approver and everybody else.
There are some times when, if you're going to book maybe not the least economical, and you're getting a warning saying, hey, this is out of policy, meaning that it's, and I figure what the percentage is, a certain percentage over the most economical, that you would just have to fill in there's a field as to like why you're doing this with a drop down list, and it could be that it's like it does have the fewest stops, or
Right.
For whatever reason, and then just the ability to record why it is that you're not choosing the most economical.
And when you do that, it does send an email to your supervisor to notify them that it's booked outside of policy and that was your reason. So the folks do get notified.
Yeah, but we're not stopping it. So it's just, something we're, recording it. And, now afterwards, if your boss doesn't like the idea that you chose something and you went ahead and booked it anyhow, that's between you and your boss. And that might be the last trip you take. But to the extent that we're acknowledging that, we just want to make sure anytime we're doing something that's, looks as though like we're spending too much money, we just have to justify it.
All right. Anything else?
So I see something, and I apologize about, when setting up Concur, whether you're, as a delegate and you're going to be processing for somebody else, whether it's the booking, the request, the expense, that it actually, the system, you kind of like you're logged in as yourself, but then there's another place where you're going to act on behalf of someone. So you're brought into a screen as if it was that employee. And so, you're not preparing a profile for, for each of your travelers, that, you're logging into their account, let's say, and you're updating and doing things on behalf of people. So it's a little bit different look and feel than what we have today. For, you're doing things, kind of under your own screen name for somebody else versus, you get that acting, and we're recording if a delegate is preparing an expense report, a request for someone else, then, you do get a message saying this was prepared by a delegate. We have less experience on the travel side because, again, travel was a live system. We couldn't do, test bookings that we would actually have to book a flight and then have to cancel it. So we really shied away from that. How the travel arranger, travel assistant is what they call it in the travel booking, how that operates remains to be seen. So, we'll certainly be looking with our pilot group and watching and helping and seeing what, how things are done there in order to convey that to the rest of the campus. So. Different.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for all of your time. We all appreciate it. Look for more information from us, more communications. You'll be seeing Concur as many places as I can put it to make sure that the campus is aware of the upcoming application changes and policy changes, and of course, international changes, or, international information, policy information, and Concur information. Thank you all very much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, wonderful holidays. I hope they all prove to be relaxing and you get some time off.
Michelle, I think you can stop the recording, and a link to the recording will be sent out via the chat.